James adjusted his tie, the knot feeling suddenly too tight. He stood before the gleaming glass doors of Innovatech, a tech company known for its groundbreaking software and, less admirably, its homogeneous leadership. He was here for the CEO position. He was more than qualified. Harvard MBA, a decade of experience in executive roles at competing firms, and a track record of turning struggling departments into profit centers. Yet, a nagging feeling persisted. He knew his resume spoke volumes, but he also knew that in rooms like the one he was about to enter, his skin would speak louder. He pushed open the doors and was greeted by a sleek, minimalist lobby. A receptionist, a young woman with bright pink hair, smiled politely. "Mr. Thompson, they're expecting you. Please have a seat." He sat, trying to ignore the subtle glances he received from other waiting applicants, all of whom seemed to fit a certain mold. White, clean-cut, and exuding an air of entitled confidence. James felt a familiar wave of weariness. He'd faced this before, the quiet assumptions, the unspoken doubts. He reminded himself of his accomplishments, of the battles he'd fought, both in boardrooms and on other fields. He took a deep breath. He was James Thompson, and he was ready. He had earned this opportunity, and he wouldn't let anyone, regardless of their preconceptions, take it away from him. He was ready to show them what he was capable of. The receptionist's intercom buzzed. "Mr. Thompson, they're ready for you now." James walked down a long hallway, the Innovatech logo emblazoned on the walls, feeling smaller with each step. He arrived at a large conference room. Inside, 5 faces turned towards him. 5 white faces. The panel was exactly as he'd feared. Mr. Abernathy, the chairman, a man with a permanent scowl etched into his features, sat at the head of the table. To his right was Ms. Davies, the CFO, whose eyes seemed to calculate his worth in dollars and cents. Then there were the 2 VPs, Mr. Henderson and Ms. Sterling, both radiating an air of bored indifference. And finally, Mr. Peterson, a younger board member who offered a fleeting, almost apologetic smile. Abernathy gestured curtly to a chair. "Mr. Thompson, please sit." The air in the room was thick with unspoken assumptions. James could feel their skepticism, their doubt. Abernathy's eyes lingered on him a moment too long. Davies' smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Henderson shuffled papers, avoiding eye contact. Sterling checked her watch. It was a familiar dance. The subtle microaggressions, the barely concealed prejudice. They saw him not as James Thompson, the accomplished executive, but as something else, a diversity hire, a token. James knew he had to be twice as good to get half the credit. He straightened his shoulders, met Abernathy's gaze, and prepared to dismantle their preconceived notions, one carefully crafted answer at a time. "So, Mr. Thompson," Abernathy began, his voice a low rumble, "tell us why you think you're the right fit for Innovatech." James launched into his prepared answer, highlighting his successes at previous companies, his innovative strategies, and his vision for the future of Innovatech. He spoke with confidence and clarity, addressing the company's current challenges and outlining his plans to overcome them. He discussed market trends, projected growth, and strategies for increasing profitability. He quoted statistics, cited case studies, and demonstrated a deep understanding of the tech industry. His words were sharp, insightful, and meticulously crafted. Davies asked about his experience with acquisitions, and James detailed his successful integration of 2 smaller companies into his previous firm, resulting in a 30% increase in revenue within the first year. Henderson inquired about his leadership style, and James articulated his belief in empowering employees and fostering a collaborative environment. He answered every question with precision and poise, expertly navigating the complexities of corporate jargon and demonstrating his mastery of the subject matter. Yet, despite his impressive performance, James sensed a disconnect. Their questions felt perfunctory, their gazes distant. He wasn't sure they were really listening. He felt like he was performing a play for an audience that had already decided on the ending. The lack of genuine engagement was a subtle but unmistakable message. He was checking all the boxes, but the interview felt like a formality. After a lull in the questioning, Mr. Abernathy leaned forward, a glint in his eye. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice dripping with a subtle condescension, "your background is certainly unique. We typically see CEOs come from a certain pedigree. Ivy League, perhaps, or decades spent climbing the corporate ladder at established firms. Your path seems different." The word different hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. It was a polite way of saying unconventional, unsuitable, not one of us. James met Abernathy's gaze, refusing to flinch. He knew this question was coming. It was the elephant in the room, the unspoken doubt that underscored every interaction he had in these spaces. "Indeed, Mr. Abernathy," James replied, his voice calm and measured. "My path has been somewhat less traditional, but I believe my diverse experiences have provided me with a unique perspective and a skill set that is particularly valuable in today's rapidly evolving tech landscape." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "While I may not have followed the conventional route, I assure you that my qualifications and accomplishments speak for themselves. I have consistently exceeded expectations in every role I've held, and I am confident that I can bring that same level of success to Innovatech." He deliberately avoided mentioning his military service. It was a card he wasn't ready to play just yet. He wanted them to see him for his business acumen first, not for what he did in the past. Ms. Davies, who had been silent until now, raised an eyebrow. "I see a gap in your resume, Mr. Thompson. Several years unaccounted for. Care to elaborate?" James hesitated. This was it, the moment of truth. He knew he couldn't avoid the question entirely. "Yes, Ms. Davies," he said, choosing his words carefully. "After completing my MBA, I serve in the military." He downplayed it, intentionally. "It was a brief stint," he said, minimizing the years he dedicated to the service. "A leadership role, mostly administrative. Honorable discharge, of course." He omitted the details of his rank, the combat deployments, the countless lives he'd been responsible for. He glossed over the medals, the commendations, the harrowing experiences that had forged him into the leader he was today. He did this for a reason. He knew that for some people, particularly those of Abernathy's generation, military service, especially from a black man, conjured up certain stereotypes. He didn't want them to see him as a soldier first and a businessman second. He wanted them to see him as a capable executive, regardless of his past. He feared that revealing the full extent of his military career would only reinforce their preconceived notions and further diminish his chances. It was a calculated risk, a strategic decision born out of years of navigating predominantly white spaces. He hoped it wouldn't backfire. Abernathy nodded dismissively. "Military service. Interesting, but hardly relevant to the complexities of the tech industry. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Thompson? We're looking for someone with a proven track record in this specific sector. Someone who understands the nuances of software development, marketing strategies, and venture capital." Ms. Sterling chimed in, her tone equally dismissive. "While we appreciate your service, Mr. Thompson, we need someone who can hit the ground running. This isn't a training ground. We need someone with years of experience navigating the challenges of a rapidly evolving tech landscape." Their words stung, but James kept his composure. He had anticipated this. They were using his military background as a convenient excuse to disqualify him, focusing on his perceived lack of direct tech industry experience, while conveniently ignoring his transferable skills and leadership abilities. He knew that leadership, strategic thinking, and problem-solving were essential in any industry, including tech. He had honed those skills under immense pressure, in situations far more challenging than anything they could imagine in their comfortable corporate offices. But he also knew that arguing with them would be futile. They had already made up their minds. The interview continued, but James could feel the energy draining from the room. Their questions became shorter, their gazes more indifferent. The outcome was inevitable. He had played his cards as best he could, but in the end, it wasn't enough. Their biases had proven too strong. The sterile conference room faded, replaced by the harsh, unforgiving landscape of Afghanistan. The air crackled with tension, thick with the smell of dust and diesel. James, no longer in a tailored suit, but in combat fatigues, stood tall amidst the chaos. He wasn't James Thompson, the job applicant, but Lieutenant Colonel Thompson, commander of the 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. He barked orders into his radio, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the cacophony of gunfire and explosions. Bravo Company, push forward. Charlie Company, provide covering fire. We need to secure that ridge. He moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the terrain, assessing the threats, making split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death. He was a leader in the truest sense of the word, inspiring his troops with his courage and unwavering resolve. He remembered the faces of his soldiers, young men and women who trusted him with their lives. He felt the weight of that responsibility, the burden of command. He knew that every decision he made had consequences, and he was prepared to bear them. He had led his battalion through countless firefights, ambushes, and IED attacks. He had faced down insurgents, negotiated with tribal elders, and navigated treacherous political landscapes. He had earned the respect of his soldiers, not through rank or authority, but through his actions, his dedication, and his unwavering commitment to their well-being. He was more than just a commander. He was a protector, a mentor, and a brother. And he was about to face one of his biggest challenges yet. They were trapped, ambushed in a narrow canyon, surrounded by enemy fighters armed with RPGs and heavy machine guns. The situation was dire. Casualties were mounting. Panic threatened to engulf the ranks. James, however, remained calm. He quickly assessed the situation, recognizing that a direct assault would be suicidal. He needed a different approach. He ordered a small team to scale the canyon walls, using ropes and grappling hooks to flank the enemy positions. It was a risky maneuver, but it was their only chance. While the flanking team moved into position, James directed the remaining troops to lay down heavy, suppressive fire, keeping the enemy pinned down. He moved from soldier to soldier, offering words of encouragement, ensuring they maintained their discipline and focus. Finally, the flanking team reached their objective. They unleashed a surprise attack, catching the enemy off guard and creating a diversion. James seized the opportunity, ordering a coordinated assault that broke through the enemy lines and allowed the battalion to escape the canyon. It was a close call. They had suffered heavy losses, but thanks to James's quick thinking, strategic decisions, and unwavering leadership, the entire battalion had survived. His bravery under fire had inspired his troops to fight on, even when the odds were stacked against them. He had saved their lives. He had commanded not just respect, but their deepest loyalty. The memory of that day, the faces of the men he saved, would stay with him forever. The memory of the canyon faded, the adrenaline rush dissipating like a desert mirage. James was back in the cold, sterile conference room, facing the impassive faces of the Innovatech board. Abernathy cleared his throat. "Well, Mr. Thompson, thank you for your time. We'll be in touch." The words were perfunctory, devoid of any genuine warmth or interest. James knew what they meant. He wasn't their guy. He stood, shook hands with each of them, offering a polite smile that concealed his disappointment. He walked out of the conference room, the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. He felt disheartened, not just by the rejection, but by the blatant prejudice he had encountered. He had prepared meticulously, presented his qualifications flawlessly, and yet it hadn't been enough. He had been judged not on his merits, but on their preconceived notions. He walked through the lobby, past the receptionist, who offered a sympathetic smile. He stepped out into the bright sunlight, feeling a sense of relief and resignation. He knew he was capable of leading Innovatech, of transforming the company and driving it to new heights. He had the skills, the experience, and the unwavering determination. But none of that mattered. He wasn't what they were looking for. He wasn't one of them. As he walked towards his car, he wondered if he would ever find a place where he was truly valued for who he was and what he could do. Later that afternoon, in a small, cluttered office tucked away on the 3rd floor of Innovatech, a junior HR employee named Sarah stared intently at James Thompson's resume. Unlike the board members, Sarah hadn't been jaded by years of corporate politics. She was fresh out of college, idealistic, and eager to make a difference. Something about James's application had piqued her interest. It wasn't just the Harvard MBA or the impressive executive experience. It was the brief mention of his military service. She found herself wondering what he had really done during those years. Driven by a genuine curiosity and a nagging feeling that the board had overlooked something important, Sarah decided to do some digging. She opened her laptop and typed James Thompson military record into the search engine. She expected to find a few basic details, his branch of service, his rank, perhaps a commendation or two. What she found instead was a trove of information that painted a vastly different picture than the one James had presented in the interview. She started seeing the name Lieutenant Colonel James Thompson come up again and again. Her eyes widened. This wasn't just a brief stint in the military. This was something significant, something extraordinary. She had to know more. Sarah delved deeper, clicking on links, reading articles, and scrolling through official military records. The more she discovered, the more astonished she became. James Thompson wasn't just a soldier. He was a decorated war hero. He had served multiple tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, leading troops in some of the most dangerous combat zones in the world. He had been awarded the Silver Star, the Bronze Star with Valor, and numerous other commendations for his bravery and leadership under fire. She found citations detailing his strategic brilliance, his unwavering courage, and his selfless dedication to his troops. She read accounts of his heroic actions, stories of him risking his own life to save his soldiers. She discovered that he had commanded not just a platoon, but an entire battalion. The sheer scope of his achievements was staggering. He had not only led his troops with distinction, but had also implemented innovative training programs that significantly reduced casualties and improved combat effectiveness. Sarah realized that the board members had completely misjudged James Thompson. They had dismissed his military service as irrelevant, failing to recognize the extraordinary leadership skills and strategic thinking he had honed in the crucible of combat. They had been blinded by their own prejudices, unable to see the true potential of the man before them. She knew she had to do something. This information couldn't be ignored. With a sense of urgency, Sarah gathered the information she had found and printed out key articles and citations. She knew she had to get this to the CEO, Mr. Harrison, immediately. She nervously approached his office, her heart pounding in her chest. Mr. Harrison was known for being a demanding but fair leader. She hoped he would listen. She explained her findings, presenting the documents she had compiled. Mr. Harrison listened intently, his expression growing more and more serious as he absorbed the information. He looked at the awards, the citations, the accounts of James's heroic actions. He reread parts of the resume and then back at Sarah. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, a look of stunned disbelief on his face. "Lieutenant Colonel James Thompson," he murmured, shaking his head. The man commanded a combat battalion. He's a decorated war hero. He immediately understood the gravity of the situation. The board had made a terrible mistake. They had allowed their biases to blind them to the true potential of a remarkable leader. He rose from his chair, his eyes filled with determination. "Thank you, Sarah," he said. "You've done a great service to this company. I'll take it from here." He had a boardroom to storm. Mr. Harrison strode into the conference room, the same room where James had faced the skeptical interview panel. Abernathy, Davies, Henderson, and Sterling were all there, settling in for what they thought was a routine afternoon meeting. He didn't mince words. He slammed the document Sarah had given him onto the table. "I want an explanation," he said, his voice sharp and commanding. "Why was James Thompson dismissed? And don't give me that nonsense about a lack of tech experience." He pointed to the citations, the articles, the photos of James in uniform. "This man is Lieutenant Colonel James Thompson. He commanded a combat battalion. He's a decorated war hero. He saved countless lives. And you dismissed him because he didn't fit your narrow definition of a CEO?" Abernathy sputtered, attempting to defend their decision. "We needed someone with specific industry experience." Harrison cut him off. "Leadership is leadership, Abernathy. Strategic thinking is strategic thinking. Whether you're commanding troops in a war zone or running a tech company, the principles are the same. And this man has proven he has what it takes to lead. You let your biases cloud your judgment. You saw a black man with an unconventional background, and you couldn't see past your own prejudices to recognize his true potential. He looked at each of them, his gaze unwavering. You failed this company today. You almost missed out on the opportunity to hire a truly exceptional leader. I expect better from all of you. MES was at home, trying to shake off the disappointment of the interview when his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number. James Thompson speaking. Mr. Thompson, this is David Harrison, CEO of Innovatech. I'm calling to apologize for the way you were treated at your interview today. James was taken aback. Apologize? Yes, Harrison said, his voice sincere. I've been made aware of the circumstances surrounding your interview, and I am deeply ashamed by the behavior of some of our board members. They allowed their biases to cloud their judgment and failed to recognize your true potential. He paused. I understand you downplayed your military service during the interview. I want you to know that I now know the truth. I know about your distinguished record, your bravery, and your exceptional leadership skills. He took a deep breath. Mr. Thompson, I want to offer you the CEO position at Innovatech. I believe you are the right person to lead this company, not in spite of your military experience, but because of it. Your leadership skills, your strategic thinking, and your unwavering determination are exactly what we need. James was stunned. He hadn't expected this. Mr. Harrison, please, call me David, Harrison interrupted. Think about it, James. I understand if you need time, but I hope you'll consider it. We need you here. The offer hung in the air, a beacon of hope after a day of disappointment. James thought for a moment, weighing his options. He could walk away, find a company that valued him from the start. Or he could accept the challenge, prove his capabilities, and change Innovatech from the inside out. He thought about the soldiers he had led, the battles he had fought, the obstacles he had overcome. He had never backed down from a challenge, and he wasn't about to start now. David, he said, his voice firm and resolute. I accept your offer. Harrison's relief was palpable. That's wonderful, James. I know you won't regret it. I'm not just accepting the position, James continued. I'm accepting the responsibility to challenge the prejudice culture that exists within Innovatech. I want to create a more equitable and inclusive environment for all employees. I support that completely, Harrison said. You'll have my full backing. James knew it wouldn't be easy. He would face resistance, skepticism, and perhaps even outright hostility from some members of the board. But he was prepared to fight for what he believed in. He was ready to lead Innovatech, not just as a CEO, but as a catalyst for change. He would show them all what he was capable of. He would prove that leadership came in many forms, and that sometimes the best leaders were the ones who had faced the greatest adversity. He was ready to command again. MES wasted no time in implementing his vision for a more inclusive Innovatech. He started by partnering with Sarah, recognizing her courage and initiative in uncovering the truth about his military record. He promoted her to a newly created position, Director of Diversity and Inclusion. Together, they launched a series of initiatives designed to promote diversity at all levels of the company. They implemented blind resume screening, removing names and identifying information from applications to reduce unconscious bias. They established mentorship programs to support employees from underrepresented backgrounds. They created employee resource groups to foster a sense of community and belonging. He also mandated diversity and inclusion training for all employees, including the board members who had initially doubted him. The training sessions were uncomfortable at times, forcing people to confront their own prejudices and biases. But James knew it was necessary to create a truly equitable environment. He actively sought out diverse talent, recruiting from historically black colleges and universities and partnering with organizations that supported veterans and people with disabilities. He made it clear that Innovatech was a company that valued diversity, not just in words, but in action. Slowly but surely, the culture at Innovatech began to change. The company became more welcoming, more inclusive, and more innovative. Employees from all backgrounds felt valued and respected, and their contributions were recognized and celebrated. James had created a place where everyone had the opportunity to thrive. Under James's leadership, Innovatech experienced a period of unprecedented growth and innovation. He leveraged his strategic thinking skills, honed in the military, to identify new market opportunities and develop cutting-edge technologies. He empowered his employees, fostering a collaborative environment where creativity and innovation thrived. He encouraged risk-taking and celebrated both successes and failures as learning opportunities. He instilled a sense of discipline and accountability, setting clear goals and expectations, and holding his team accountable for achieving them. His military training proved invaluable in creating a high-performing team that was focused on results. Innovatech's profits soared, exceeding all expectations. The company's stock price skyrocketed, making it a Wall Street darling. Innovatech became known not just for its innovative products, but also for its inclusive culture and its commitment to social responsibility. The company won numerous awards for its workplace environment and its community involvement. James was recognized as one of the top CEOs in the tech industry, gracing the covers of business magazines and being invited to speak at prestigious conferences. Innovatech had become a leader in its industry, not just because of its technology, but because of its people. James had proven that diversity and inclusion were not just the right things to do, but they were also good for business. He had transformed Innovatech into a model for other companies to follow. The laughter had long since faded. Now, they only spoke of Innovatech with respect and admiration. The same board members who had initially doubted James were now singing his praises. Abernathy, Davies, Henderson, and even Sterling were forced to acknowledge their misjudgment. At board meetings, they now listened attentively to James's presentations, seeking his guidance and expertise. They marveled at his strategic vision, his ability to inspire his team, and his unwavering commitment to excellence. Abernathy, in particular, had undergone a significant transformation. He publicly apologized to James for his initial skepticism, admitting that he had allowed his biases to cloud his judgment. He became a vocal advocate for diversity and inclusion, championing James's initiatives and promoting a more equitable culture within the company. Davies, always focused on the bottom line, was impressed by the company's financial performance under James's leadership. She acknowledged that his commitment to diversity and inclusion had not only improved the company's culture, but had also boosted its profitability. Henderson and Sterling, once indifferent, were now fully engaged in the company's mission, inspired by James's leadership and his unwavering commitment to creating a better future. They saw the positive impact of his leadership on the company's employees and its bottom line. They had been wrong, and they knew it, and they were man enough to admit it. They had initially laughed at James, but now they respected and admired him. He had proven them wrong in every possible way. Sitting in his spacious office, overlooking the city skyline, James reflected on his journey. It had been a long and challenging road, filled with obstacles and setbacks. But he had persevered, never losing sight of his goals. He thought about the interview, the skepticism, the prejudice. He realized that those experiences had made him stronger, more determined to succeed. He had learned that sometimes you had to fight for what you believed in, even when the odds were stacked against you. He thought about his military service, the lessons he had learned about leadership, strategy, and teamwork. He realized that those experiences had prepared him for the challenges he faced as a CEO. He had learned that leadership was not about rank or authority, but about inspiring others to achieve a common goal. He thought about Sarah, the junior HR employee who had taken a chance on him, who had seen beyond the surface and recognized his true potential. He realized that one person can make a difference, and that it was important to support and empower those who were willing to challenge the status quo. He thought about the importance of challenging stereotypes, of breaking down barriers, and of creating a more equitable and inclusive world. He had proven that diversity was not a weakness, but a strength, and that everyone deserved the opportunity to reach their full potential, regardless of their background or James made it a priority to mentor other aspiring leaders from diverse backgrounds. He knew how difficult it could be to navigate the corporate world, especially for those who didn't fit the traditional mold. He shared his experiences, his insights, and his strategies for overcoming adversity. He encouraged them to embrace their unique perspectives, to challenge stereotypes, and to never give up on their dreams. He served as a role model, demonstrating that it was possible to succeed, even when faced with prejudice and discrimination. He showed them that leadership came in many forms and that their voices mattered. He established a leadership development program at Innovatech, specifically designed to support and empower employees from underrepresented backgrounds. He invited guest speakers, provided mentorship opportunities, and offered training in leadership skills, communication, and strategic thinking. He watched with pride as his men flourished, taking on leadership roles within the company and making a positive impact on the world. He knew that his legacy would not just be the success of Innovatech, but the success of the leaders he had helped to develop. He had come a long way from that sterile conference room, where he had been judged and dismissed because of his background. He had proven them wrong, not just by achieving success, but by using his success to create a better future for others. And so, the story of the black man who commanded a combat battalion and then commanded a tech company became a story of inspiration, hope, and the transformative power of leadership.